Welcome back, and today we are playing out the French Fokker G.IAT. Now this thing had a few misconceptions about it. The first one that I heard is that it gets a 3-kilometer airspan. Simply not true. You get a 1-kilometer one. Now sure, on some maps where the airfields are higher, you might spawn at 2, sometimes at 3 kilometers. But roughly speaking, you get just a strike fighter spawn, and you spawn about a kilometer above the runway. Now this is very helpful, because the climb rate of this thing, well, let's just say that the Dutch don't really like elevation. They try to keep everything at sea level. And this thing really is no exception. It feels like the engines are powered by someone pedaling a bicycle, and it really doesn't like to accelerate or climb at all. Now the issue is that it also doesn't like going fast, so when you get people diving on you because they end up above you, you need to stay at about 350 to 380, and if you go any faster, it is very likely that you compress and that you simply die. Now at these speeds, it's kind of iffy. The flaps make it turn quite okay, but when you try to go vertical at all, you can tell right here, it just falls out of the air almost instantly. This thing is not made to go very slow, and it's not made to go very fast. But if you really have to choose, try to get a little bit slow, try to force the flaps, and try to kind of float behind people. You are at a massive disadvantage against most enemies, and you really just have to try and get creative, because if you don't get creative, you're not going to get very far. Now the main selling point of this thing is going to be the guns, which are pretty okay. Keep in mind they are still MGs, and you do need somewhat of a prolonged burst on people, which is kind of the issue here, because the plane isn't very good at getting prolonged shots. And next to that, the other benefit is that it's 2.3. Most of the people that you fight don't have the brightest of ideas on how air combat works, and that's completely okay. That's why the low tiers exist. But that's why a plane like this is actually pretty flyable. Now it might actually go up in BR, because the most people that I see, they just go in the head-ons, they spray at people, they have an airspan. Not everyone climbs, so you end up above a lot of people. So it might not be the best plane, but you still might get pretty decent results. This is my full aileron roll at 430 kilometers an hour. The roll does not exist, and when I try pulling, you'll see the same thing. When I'm gonna dive on this Yak 1, I'm streaming to some people on Discord here, and I'm basically explaining what the plane is like. So I'm gonna give you a bit of a example here. When I dive on the Yak 1, I'm only going 420, which means that I'm gonna be compressing quite badly. Now the Hurricane hits the Yak 1, and we're gonna dive on him. We're gonna try to finish him off. I had a feeling that he was severe, so we're gonna dive. We're going 470 here. I get some shots in. We get a severe actually, almost ram the Hurricane, and this is my full elevator at 450. It just really doesn't like to go anywhere, and this is very detrimental. You can't go fast because you compress. If you go too slow, you become a very easy target, and you can tell that I was going about 500 on the deck. I put it into a relatively steep climb, and I only end up at about a kilometer. The engines here are about 700 horsepower apiece, and it really just, it doesn't work. The turret on the back, it works, I guess. The issue is that it has to rotate before it can shoot, so you can tell that it takes a little bit before the gun gets on target. Now the nice thing here is that you can shoot straight up, so you can shoot about 90 degrees straight vertical. Now this doesn't really come into play ever. It's a single barrel MG, it's not a heavy MG. It doesn't do the most amount of damage, but it can hopefully deter some people. Now the issue is that, again, you're not very quick, so you can't really outrun someone. You can't like spray at them, make them dodge, and because they lose so much speed, you start outrunning them. None of that. It is kind of mid in that regard. Now if you are above people, you can of course use your energy that you have stored in your balls and use the flaps. The flaps are pretty strong, but they just kind of cost you too much energy, and energy is something that is pretty scarce in this thing. So it's a good idea to not use them too much. But at the same time, if you don't use them, you probably get outturned and you die anyway. So overall, you're kind of shit out of luck. Now we have a Yak 7 below us, and he is pitching straight up for us. Now if you get in a situation like this, it's very easy to just kind of stay over their nose. Try to make him climb as steeply as possible without like getting too close to him. And then once he starts going slow enough, you just kind of pitch up over his nose. There he goes, he's stalling, and then we pitch straight down. And this guy is going to do exactly nothing because he is stalled the fuck out. Now we hit him with a severe, we set him on fire, and then we want to dogfight the 109. The issue is that the 109 is severely scared of us, and he is gonna be camping the airfield. Now, for now, he's actually kind of catching us, so I want to store as much energy as I can by climbing straight up. And then I can see what he does. Now, I'm gonna go a little bit horizontal here. I decided I actually want to have a little bit more speed, have a teammate coming in. So I'm gonna start turning around the second the teammate comes in here. He chooses a target and then I turn around. Now they go head on with each other. The 109 starts coming for me, it looks like, but then he doesn't. And then he does again. So he dodges shots. He manages to hit our tail with the MG. It didn't really do any damage. And we are gonna try and go vertical. Try to get this guy as slow as possible and kind of float behind him. But he is gonna go for the F4U. And now here comes the massive drawback of this compression. I cannot actually chase this guy right now because this is full elevator pull. I am not pulling more than I can't pull more than this. And he is gonna be able to kind of cut inside of us. We need to slow down, otherwise I just get reversed. And the second I try to like fly away from his airfield because I don't want to get slammed by his AA. Guess what he does? The most original tactic that low tier pilots like to utilize, and exactly why I say that AA should be removed. It's turning back to the runway. He is behind me. He will catch me in the long run. And still it doesn't matter. He will run straight back to the airfield and he's gonna be camping it until the game runs out. I kill a bomber, but I'm not gonna be boring you with that. Now we have a MiG-3 coming in and it's gonna be the same issue. We are not able to go very much above 430. And we are just gonna try to maintain our speed a little bit to be as evasive as possible. But we don't want to go too fast because then we just become a sitting duck. So we pull in. The MiG-3 also doesn't turn particularly well, but he has a very good energy generation. So I just want to get a shot as quickly as I can. And here comes the 2.3 pilot. And he kind of flies straight for a bit. Gives me a lot of position. And then he pulls in. And because of that, we are going to be able to kind of just sit inside of his turn. And we are going to be able to just kind of shoot him in half. Now, this right here is what I mean with it's all about the pilots. At 2.3, there's a lot of guys that just aren't very great. And again, this isn't an issue. But when you measure the effectiveness of a plane, I do think that you have to take into account that most of your enemies are not playing it optimally. And that's fine, they don't do it at basically any BR. But when your enemies are basically throwing themselves in front of your guns, I don't think it's fair to say that the plane is insane. Because the kills that I'm getting here, I can probably get when I'm running a 50 cal on a bicycle. And I am actually driving on ground level and shooting 3 kilometers into the air. Here again, Yak 1 pitches up for us, he stalls himself out. And we pitch straight into him. Now, all he had to do was fly straight, don't pitch up after us. And we would have been able to do nothing. We just kinda die. But he does pitch up after us, we stall him out, we set him on fire. And then we start engaging the Key 45 that is across the map. Now this guy has been running away for a little bit. I don't think he saw us, he was just trying to side climb. And I want you to take a look at the difference in turning capability here. I'm not even compressing yet, we're not going 400. And look at him cutting into our loop. We didn't even finish half of it. And he's already about to get shots on us. So I straighten out, I'm trying to get a little bit of separation. And I want this guy to go faster than me, so I want him to pick up some speed. We're gonna zero throttle, I'm gonna use the flaps here to slow down a little bit more. Unfortunately, they instantly fall off. So I'm trying to stay above his nose, I'm trying to stay on his wingtip, so he has to roll as much as possible. And I'm being forced to dive, and because I dove a little bit there, I picked up some speed. Which made me compress. Now luckily, he's about to overshoot here because he's going a bit faster. We roll out of the way. I thought I might be able to get a shot here, but I don't have flaps, so I'm gonna ram into him. So instead, I'm gonna pull up behind him. And now, because we are both going super slow, I should be able to get the freest shot in the world. And again, the guns are pretty decent, but you need a sustained fire. And otherwise, it's probably not gonna do much. Now he ends up dying. And we're going to climb towards the middle of the map because the last two guys are actually around the airfield. Now the Key 43 comes out and he's going to be engaging our Fokker 190. And the Fokker 190 is going to do something beautifully. Now when I see a teammate that actually helps me out, or I help out a teammate and they take the bait properly, this is always amazing, especially when it's a random. So shout out to Mr. Shumillion or whatever his name is. Because he is actually going to somewhat dogfight the Key 43 here, because he sees me coming in. He goes straight vertical, which would have straight up killed him. But because I am right here, this Key 43 is not going to be able to do anything with it. And there he goes. And then we have the D4 Y3. And he's going to be camping the base for the next little bit. And I'm going to be talking shit to him, of course, to bait him out. We start ground pounding. And after ground pounding for a little bit, he is of course going to come in now and try to kill us. Now we shoot in the head on, we run out of ammo because that was the only shot I was going to be getting. And he's going to be much quicker than us, so I'm just going to turn away from him and use the gunner. Now the gunner here against the D3 D4 is actually pretty okay, but the issue is because it's like bouncing up and down, it's kind of annoying to get the guns on him and you need to be somewhat evasive. Now luckily his gun does absolutely no damage, and this plane actually has a pretty decent damage model. Now it's of course partially because everything that shoots you is a 7mm, an 8mm, a shitty belt 50 cal. You know, overall you don't really have high powered guns, so you should be kind of okay when people start shooting at you. And you kind of have to rely on that because you just don't have the speed or the high speed maneuverability to get outside of the guns of people. Now this thing also has some bombs. Now some people have been asking me how you pronounce it. They're called vliegtuigbommen, and they are literally translated airplane bombs. And you have 50 kilograms, with which you have 6. You have 2 100s, 1 300 or 1 400. Now I don't think this is particularly amazing, but the 400 kilogram is of course okay for ground RB, but you only get one of them. So I think it's not really worth it. As a strike fighter, this thing is kind of mid. The MGs don't really have the ability to strafe ground units properly, other than obviously artillery, AA, open tops, stuff like that. You know, stuff that you could kill with a fighter, a bomber, or basically anything with an offensive weapon. So I don't really think that this sells the plane too well. Overall, I had a pretty okay time in it. I don't think I've died, but I've been hit quite a bit, which is quite rare for me. Normally when I get hit, my plane just implodes. I mean, a lot of you can probably relate to this. Not very often where you get hit and don't sustain any damage. And with this thing, I mean, it happened quite often. I mean, look at the thickness of these wings. It looks like a mosquito wing from the front. It's super thick. The G.IAT here is absolutely enormous. And because of that, you might be able to tank some shells. Plane overall feels kind of awkward. It really is underpowered. I know it's not a fighter. I know it's not made to do this kind of role. But when I hear everyone praise this thing about its flight performance, its airspan, the insanely good guns, the insanely good turn rate, and the ability to prop hang because it has 2 engines, and I'm just like, my brother in Christ, this thing is an absolute potato. And again, there is nothing wrong with that, but I just feel like kicking puppies doesn't make a plane particularly good. Now yeah, it's pretty decent fun. It's definitely unique. It's one of those planes that there's really nothing else like it. And I think that is nice, and I do like the fact that we have a new plane, a new airframe, something that is actually unique. And the issue is that we get the Benelux tree, we get basically 80% Belgium shit, which is just copy-paste. We have a Hunter F6, which is the same Hunter F6, but with slightly different missiles. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Then we have the Mirage 5B, which is like a worse 3E. So I don't think that the addition of the Benelux tree really did much for the game. We got some F-16s, of which we already have like 16 in the game. We got like some new Meteor, the new Mirage, which we already had. Now yes, the Mark 14 Spitfire with the clipped wings is actually kind of unique, because the one that we have in the game is premium, it's in the British tech tree. And yes, it is severely mid. But it's a plane that you normally have to pay for, so I do think it's good that they added it to the game. But I just don't see the reason for this sub-tech tree. And it's the same thing with the Swedish one, or the Finnish one, I guess. Well, like, it doesn't really add anything. It's all copy-paste. You're just adding the same vehicles to a different nation. And I get it that for people that only play one nation, where they want more variety, that is good for them. That's completely understandable. But they could also add more variety to these tech trees by giving them some indigenous designs. Like, you don't need only copy-paste. You can add the copy-paste together with something new. But for some reason, Gaijin lately has really been scraping the bottom of the barrel, because every time it's essentially the same vehicle, just with some little bit of alteration. Look at the F-15A and the F-15C. It's essentially the same plane. The F-16C is slightly heavier. They tweaked the engines. They gave it some different thingies under the hood, and then they add some weight to it and say, well, it gets a new missile, this is a new plane, have fun grinding 400,000 RP, and then stock grind the fucking thing. I think it's a bit of a kick in the nuts, but you know, let's take a look at the gameplay again. This was the absolute first game that I did in this thing. Now, I am not aware of the compression right now. I'm not aware of how well it turns, so I am gonna be flying it like I would normally. I'm gonna be testing the stuff and flying it out of its comfort zone, because I don't know where the comfort zone is just yet. And I try to be as aggressive as possible. Very quickly, of course, I realize It's not very fast, it doesn't climb very well, and I will alter, of course, the gameplay to this instantly. I'm gonna be as aggressive as I think I can be, and go a little bit over that, but I'm not just gonna kill myself straight up. I still want to have a fight and see what the limits are. I'm not gonna just turn in front of someone and pray that they are going to be missing me. We have a P-63 coming in, and at this point, I know that the P-63 is very bad at low speed, and I had a feeling that this thing would actually be very strong in a dogfight. Because I just turned a little bit, it felt pretty okay. But again, I'm not aware of that compression just yet, so I'm gonna actually pitch up into the F4U here, pick up a little bit of speed, go up over his nose, and right here is actually pretty decent. I'm feeling pretty good. So I decide to go down here, pick up some speed to turn into him. And then I hit 380. Look at my turn rate. I am flying straight. I instantly try to throttle down. I'm trying to make sure that I attempt to get behind him. Now you can tell that when I try to get behind him by going down, I lose all my position basically instantly. So I'm zero throttling in a raid fight here basically, which is what you really don't want to do. But I need to get slower, because if I don't, I die. Now I notice that the F4U is not flying into the proper direction. He is getting a little bit of separation, which gives me the ability to pull back in. We blast off the flaps, of course. And we get a head-on. Now this is a scenario that I don't want to be in, because this thing looks to be pretty fragile. We spray at him, we damage his engine. We're only going to 240 at this point, so I'm able to actually pull into him rather easily here. Also notice the ball sack hanging from the twin boom, the tail gear. It's absolutely hideous. Someone pointed that out to me midstream, and I was just... it looks absolutely horrendous. But we finally kill the F4U after a lot of actual struggle. And we go back into a bit of a climb. Now I'm gonna be side climbing, so I'll cut this out for you, because this is gonna take forever with these lawnmower engines. And we are back in the middle of the map. Now we have a P-38 on the left, a P-38 directly in front of us, and they are both in a squad. So I have a feeling that they are gonna be working together. So for now I'm actually kind of cautious about engaging this first one, but then the one on the left dives essentially to the deck. Now he still has the energy to pitch up to us, but I'm gonna try to shoot this guy in the head on. He hits us, we hit him. We won't really do any damage, and I'm gonna try to get out of his guns here, barely able to. And he just kind of flies straight and keeps his energy, which is somewhat correct, but he's not fast enough to do this, so I'm just gonna end up directly on a 6. We're gonna be spraying at him. We have plenty of ammo, we get some hits in, we get a crit. Now it doesn't say what the crit was, so it probably did absolutely no damage whatsoever. And we go head on with the second one. We get hit again. And the issue here is that if you try to dodge the head on without shooting at them, they are just able to full commit you, and there is very little you can do, because you are simply too slow to really dodge, especially with nose mounted guns like on the P-38. Now P-38s are luckily also kind of awkward to aim, so you might get away with it. Just be careful that you don't stick the head on too long. You do want to be somewhat evasive, but you kind of have to take these head-ons because you're simply too slow to really do anything. Now the P-38E is going for someone else, and I get behind him again. I'm going to be shooting some burst. I get a hit in, doesn't actually do anything yet again. And we're gonna go into a little bit of a dive. Now I notice that he's going straight vertical, the other P-38 is flying away. But I'm not able to follow that, because I just don't have the engine power to actually follow these guys up. So I'm gonna straighten out. And at this point I am basically aware of the compression. Now I'm not sure when exactly that it starts. I know that it starts at about 400. So I'm gonna be not even tickling that speed. I'm gonna try to stay below 380. At least in my mind right now. In practice it's a little bit harder to do, because of course I need to pick up some speed to dodge these guns. The other P-38 is far away, so we're gonna try and pitch up over his nose. We manage to get out of his guns. We bait him into this kind of... I don't know what to call this. I bait him into this, and I don't get the shot because this thing just doesn't have any power whatsoever. So we stall out. We pitch the nose down. But now I know that he tries to go vertical with me. That's good to know, because I can try to set that up properly again. And now I know what he does roughly. So if I'm able to recreate this, I'm going to be able to set up for the shot. So we pitch up over his nose, and this time I'm going to pull a little bit more tight, and he ends up hitting us. But we also get a shot on him. There we go. A crit. It did absolutely nothing. So we are going to try to stick it a little bit longer, because I need him to die. But again, lawnmower engines, it is not able to keep going up. It's very hard to punish people that actually play energy. And you can tell that with the P-38, that He has me by the balls, and he could have killed me like 4 times over already, but he's just making some mistakes. And that is the reason why I'm still kind of in the fight. Now he's gonna come here again, and I'm going over 400 this time, so I'm compressing completely. Look at the easiest shot in the world that I'm giving him. I'm trying to knife edge him so he shoots the side of my plane. And we do the exact same thing again, and because he keeps falling for it, he's gonna fall right back into the hangar. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you all for watching. Hope the G.IAT was plentiful. And you'll see me in the next one.